I love your idea of Asterix de Gaulle, that the Irish music industry is like Asterix de Gaulle. And, you know, instead of a disciplined, trained large army trying to repel the Romans, you know, that the lesson in Asterix is that it's the magic potion, it's the wiliness, it's the imagination that can combat a militaristic, large, dominant force. So maybe that's a lovely way to look at the moments in the Irish music industry, where the Irish music industry, with its magic potion and its agility and its imagination, like Asterix, has been able to make a really, really deep and lasting impression. And I think that your point about Westlife, could Westlife have happened without Boyzone? We don't know that. You know, that's conjecture, but I absolutely would be making the claim based on the research, based on what actually happened, that it couldn't have happened, that Westlife really were propelled by the experience of Boyzone, by the lessons learned, because it was the same people in terms of Louis Walsh being involved. But you mentioned when you were talking about Boyzone, the importance of television. Louis Walsh is becoming a bigger and bigger cultural figure throughout this period. So when he says a band is good, a band is valid, that he should be listened to, when he's got a vision for a band, he's got the stature, he's got the platform. So that I hadn't thought until you said that of how the boy bands were really television bands. You know, they take television out of the equation and it's completely different. But obviously there's a far more sophisticated infrastructure available to Louis Walsh. He's got a reputation because he's delivered one successful boy band. And the Louis Walsh model and the lesson from Louis is, if you get one away, there's a good chance you can get a second away. And then the bigger question is, well, then what happened with Jedward? How come they weren't as big as the others? So you get one away, there's a good chance you'll get the second one away. But there might have been a lot of luck, a lot of timing. And then one of your points, I think, invites me to want to say that the music industry is constantly changing. So the model that works at one stage may not work a year later or 10 years. But the nugget of the idea, the approach, the vision might very well work, because the music industry has no memory. I think the music industry a generation in the music industry to me is 4 years. It's the amount of time that you're at university. You go into university, you have a certain music taste. It might be different by the time you graduate. And it might be very intense, but if you're lucky, maybe it's the music that you like for the rest of your life. But it may change and may evolve. And certainly the memory of what happened, even for the participants, when you're first year in university, that knowledge isn't available to the people who enter 4 years later. Because the other people have gone, or they're too busy to explain what they did. So the Boys Own to Westlife is really interesting because Westlife become a much bigger global sensation. And then the solo careers, again, become very, very lucrative cultural products for us. If we own the publishing, an Irish entity, if we own the record rights, Irish entity, the money would be would make a substantial difference to Ireland's exchequer. But we're not set up to do that. And, the fact that, you had a member of Boys Own involved in the management of Westlife, and, clearly, okay, we've got a rock star. He's telling us what to do, so we'll do it. But I think you can't remove from that story just how significant a figure Louis was globally at that stage, and how influential he was. But then when you peel it back, the guys in Westlife, they're grown up in Sligo, and they do a huge amount of the graft of the early work themselves in a place that's not, it's not South Central. It's not Maida Vale. It's not the Sorbonne. These were young guys who had a hunger and ambition, who clearly had some talent, and they were able to achieve a huge amount. And, I get people all the time saying, oh, I want to be in a boy band, or I want to be a rock star. What you do? And, I say, study the first 18 months of Green Day's history. Look at their tour dates. Look where they went. Imagine how much they were getting paid. Look at the early media. And the same for anyone who wants to be a pop star is study what the guys, including the guy who then got kicked out, what the guys in Westlife did before they got a manager. Study that. And if you're not working that hard or that intelligently or with that amount of savviness, then, the Bank of Ireland's probably a good place to send your CV.